Let's forget about everything we've been told about social media. The hacks, the trends, the time of day.
I think this is one of my top 3 best episodes.
What determines whether we get 1,000 views or 10 million views? It's the
Virality isn't luck, it's science. Everyone is in this phase where now nobody knows what works.
We've spent 15,000 hours analyzing content, the algorithms. They were designed to do one thing and one thing only. Social media is not new, it's just a new medium for telling stories.
Someone tuning in today wants to basically hit that viral mark. What is the first step that they do today?
So the big thing is not every viral video is a format, not every viral video is a clue to success.
Yes.
You don't have to be the face of your brand. You don't need a fancy camera, you don't need fancy lights to get started.
Brendan, everything you're saying up until now is actually countering a lot of the things that I've read up on social media.
Quality beats quantity every single time. Most brands think their social media profile is their website and their content posts are their ads. It's kind of like this dangerous lie that people are told.
You've really opened up my mind today, and I hope that everyone tunes in doesn't miss a minute. Virality is often spoken about like it's magic, like something that happens to you, not something you can design. But in today's world, attention isn't accidental, it's engineered. My guest today is brilliant. He has spent years decoding exactly how ideas travel, why some stories work, how some stories are told, and what is good content from bad content. This conversation is about algorithms, how they change, what works, what doesn't, how to copy things. It's about trends, it's about human psychology, and it's about building a system to make sure that the content you're creating reaches the amount of people that it deserves to reach. If you're someone who's creating consistently but feels invisible, if you've ever wondered why effort doesn't always equal reach, this episode will change how you think about visibility and content and going viral. Today, we're not just talking about the theory, we're breaking down what can be tested, measured, and repeated, even if you don't have a big following. I'm recording this after finishing the entire episode, and I vouch for the fact that watching this episode, this 1 hour, will change your content game for life. It's a life-changing episode. Don't miss it. Thank you so much for being here, Brendan, and welcome to the Masoom Minawala show.
Well, it's such a pleasure to connect with you and everybody that's tuning into this.
So I've watched your content and I find it incredible. And some of the things that you say are so interesting and such a fresh perspective to what I think is a topic that is so discussed today, which is content and virality. Now, something that you say that I find very interesting and I want to ask you about is that virality isn't luck, it's science. Why do you say that?
So I've spent the past 20 years dedicating my entire career to one thing, and that's studying and understanding who, what, and why goes viral, what breaks through, versus why there's also so many brilliant brands, businesses, and creators that have so much value to offer that don't. So I built a team at the company I founded called Hookpoint, where we spent 15,000 hours analyzing content. And there is a repeatable science to success. Now, the amazing thing, and kind of to like simplify it for your audience, like I think for the next, hour that we spend together, let's forget about everything we've been told about social media, okay? The hacks, the trends, the time of day, the frequency, it's just storytelling. So social media is basically survival of the fittest of the best storytellers. And it's essentially history repeating itself over and over again. You see, social media is no different than the radio was. It's no different than television. It's no different than film. It's no different than books. It's telling stories, and the best stories rise to the top. So I started my career in the movie industry, and I went to film school to study all the elements of what it takes to tell a great story through that medium. And the same principles apply. If you can really grab somebody's attention and hold somebody's attention, you win their trust, and they ultimately want to connect with you as a person or a brand.
So there's storytelling, and there's grabbing the attention and holding the attention.
So if we think about social media, the thing that controls distribution of the content, meaning what determines whether we get 1,000 views or 10 million views? It's the algorithms. So there's a lot of demonization and like talk about the algorithms. They were designed to do one thing and one thing only. When I started in social media in 2005, there's less than 50 million people on social media. Today, there's 5.2 billion people on social media. So if we think about our favorite app, opening it right now, whether it's TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, there's probably 150,000 pieces of content the algorithm could personally seed to you based upon all the content you've engaged with and the people that you follow. But we're not robots. We can't consume 150,000 pieces of content at once. So they were designed purely to prioritize what are the first 5, 10, 15 pieces of content that I'm going to see to you as an individual to do what? To keep you on the platforms longer. Why? Because all of these platforms, their business models are advertising. So the longer people spend on these platforms, the more ads they can serve and the more profit they generate. So as a content creator, as a storyteller, it's all about grabbing attention first, because if people scroll past, you never have a chance to tell your story or the message you want to get across. But it's not just about grabbing attention, you have to hold it to prove to the algorithms that you have the ability to keep people on their platform longer so they can make more money. And if we think about storytelling, if you think about the last movie you saw, the last TV show, what are stories designed to do? They introduce it with a beginning to the story, and then you want to find out what happens at the end of the story. So it's purely based on what the algorithms are looking for, and that's why storytelling works so well on these platforms.
What if I'm a brand that has a product?
Yes.
How do I tell a story with a product?
So it's a great question. So let's distinguish like the purpose of social media, because most brands and people trying to sell products make the mistake that think their social media profile is their website and their content posts are their ads. But when was the last time you ever logged onto social media and say, I want to see a great ad today? Never. That's not why you go there. So the purpose of using social media to sell your products is to get people to know, like, and trust you. So I'll give you a prime example. So we worked with an amazing guy. His name's Tanner Leatherstein. And when he came to us, he had leather goods. So he had handcrafted wallets and briefcases and belts. And he spent 30 years as a leather craftsman, like mastering the expertise. But when he started on social media, he was stuck at 2,000 followers. And what was he doing? He was just creating ads. And he was so frustrated, he would stay up until 2 a.m. just scrolling through and seeing more, like, less experienced people and less, like, low quality products go viral. And he's like, what am I doing wrong? So what we helped Tanner do is we helped him create a storytelling format. And a format is like a repeatable structure that's proven to have success that you can insert your message or brand into. So the format that we helped him design is called Is It Worth It? So basically he takes very expensive handcrafted leather goods like a $5,000 Chanel handbag, Louis Vuitton shoes, and actually deconstructs it on screen and then tells you whether it's worth the money that you're paying for it. So through that story he's telling, he's building so much trust with the audience that today he has over 2.5 million following him across social media, and his most expensive products completely sell out. So it's not about how can I sell my product, it's how can I tell a story behind my product, how can I tell a story behind my brand that inspires people to want to take that action.
Okay. So now that we're talking about products and businesses, I think let's take that route first, right? And I think let's come down to this. So if I'm a business and I've identified that this is a story that I want to tell about my product or service, do I have to constantly tell the same story?
No. So the first place that I start is first understand there's this concept of a format. So we just talked about one with Is It Worth It? There are hundreds, if not thousands, of these formats. So we've spent 15,000 hours analyzing over 300.
Okay.
So some others that you have probably seen is man on the street. You approach a random stranger in the street and interview them. You know, that has generated billions and billions. It generates billions of views every month. But a fascinating stat is, you know when that format was first used? Can you guess what year?
I mean, I would think it's age old.
1955. And that's what I'm talking about. Social media is not new. It's just a new medium for telling stories. Another format that everybody's probably seen is called two characters, one light bulb, where you play the same, or it's the same person playing two different characters. So you have like Erica Colbert that does like legal stuff, or Mark Tilbury that does finance.
Yes.
So the first thing as a brand or a creator is to understand that there are patterns to this. There are structures that you can use. Another great one that everybody will know is, I started in the movie industry, and when I went to film school, the fascinating thing that you learn is every movie over the past 100 years uses the same format. It's a 3-act structure. It doesn't change. Just the story is what changes. So first, understand there is a format there and identify the format that feels authentic to you, that matches who you want to be and represent yourself. Because if you just start with ideas, you're going to struggle because you're not going to know the structure to insert that into. So that's where I always tell people to start is become a student of social media before you start creating. Is make this shift of when you log onto social media, instead of just endlessly scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, start to kind of learn like what stories are people telling, what formats are they using, and start to kind of dig deeper into that.
What is the 3X structure that you spoke about?
Yeah, so in movies, there's a first act, second act, and third act. So basically, like a superhero movie, in the first few minutes, there's called an inciting incident. So the superhero runs into a challenge or a problem. They get introduced to this, like their whole world is shattered and thrown upside down. And for that first act, they're kind of trying to find their way through what does this mean for me? What do I need to do? And then act 2 is all about that journey to accomplish that one thing. So it's like, in the inciting incident, I was just introduced to a new villain, and it's destroying the entire world. And I'm trying to navigate my way through it. And then act 2 is the journey to chase down the villain.
Yes.
And then act 3 is the climax of that final battle with the villain. So there's this storytelling structure that every movie follows, yet we don't feel it when we watch it. We don't sit down and watch a movie and be like, oh, it's another 3-act structure, I'm bored. So you see like Steven Spielberg, he'll do like the movie E.T. and then Jaws or Indiana Jones or a movie about Abraham Lincoln. They're all unique and authentic in the story, but they use that structure to it. Because sometimes when people hear format or structure, they're like, well, I just want to be authentic. I want to be original. But the reality is the structure unlocks creativity, because it gives you a path to master, where I'm sure you've heard it, a lot of people on social media say, go after trends. Use this viral trending audio or copy this trend. The challenge with that is you never master story. So like the analogy I like to give is, let's say that we were gonna decide we wanna learn a musical instrument. We wanna become good at a musical instrument. If you follow the trend approach, it's week 1, let's start with the drums. But you know what? Week 2, we're gonna switch to the guitar. Week 3, we're gonna move to the flute. Week 4, it's gonna be the violin. Well, what happens if you keep shifting the instrument? Well, you never become good at one. And that's where these structures, these formats, allow you to master storytelling, because it gives you a structure to base your message off of.
I have never thought about it like this.
That's why you see like Man on the Street.
Yes.
Like right now, who do we have? We have Simon Squibb,
yes,
interviewing people, what is your dream? We have School of Hard Knocks, interviewing people like, how did you make your first $1 million?
What do you do for a living?
What do you do for a living? What's your fitness routine? What's your favorite meal? What gives you confidence? Like, what was your biggest heartbreak? Like, all of these things. Why? Because that format is set up to tell stories.
So, Brendan, let's say someone tuning in today wants to change their content, right? They want to change how the content is performing, for it to connect with more people, for it to get more engagement, more views, basically hit that viral mark. What should they do today? What is the first step that they do today? They're already creating content.
So step number 1 is we kind of talk. So I have a 5-step system. We can walk through all 5 steps to break it down. So step 1 is just making this mindset shift. Instead of, when we log on to social media, we're not going to consume content. We're going to start analyzing it for like an expert content creator. So when we see a video with a million views, we're going to stop and we're going to look at, okay, what are these people doing? And then we're going to click on their profile and see, are they using that same structure over and over again?
Okay.
So a big mistake people make is we've kind of built this system called the Hook Point Format Finder of finding your format. The big mistake people make is they see a video with 1 million views and they think that, well, I'm just going to do that without actually clicking on the creator's profile to see if they've used that same structure at least 5 or 10 times to have success. So the big thing is not every viral video is a format. Not every viral video is a clue to success. So that's the first thing is we want to make that mindset shift to start learning as an expert content creator. And that's just awareness. Just have awareness when you're logging on and start trying to dig in. Why does this video have 1 million views? Why does this one have 1,000 views? So that's step number 1. So step number 2 is as we get into kind of this creator mindset, now we want to start finding our format.
Okay.
So that's where just consuming content, you can start that way, or you can start searching for things. So like if you have a fashion brand, you can type in fashion man on the street, fashion listicle, fashion Q&A to kind of like start looking in the Explorer feed or whatever platform it is to kind of see if viral videos start emerging, and then again, click the creator's profile. Are they having success repeatedly with that? Now there's 2 key questions I would have people, write down and ask themselves as they're choosing a format. Because this is really important. Like we do like a very deep kind of like matchmaking process with people in their formats. Like we spend hours and hours trying to kind of match people with their ideal format. But 2 questions, simple questions that people can take away with is number 1, what resources do I have? Because literally some of our most successful clients are creating content on their iPhone. You don't need an entire team. You don't need a fancy camera. You don't need fancy lights to get started. Literally, we all have these things in our pockets. And if you tell a great story with this, you can reach millions and millions of people. So it's kind of like this dangerous lie that people are told, or they have a limiting belief that, you know what, once I get that social media manager, once I get that new camera, once I can afford a team, once I can get great lights, then I'll take social media seriously. And what that does is that it keeps so many brilliant and capable people on the sidelines. So just start with the resources that you have. There's formats for every resource. The next one is what excites you. What feels authentic to you.
This is step 3.
No, this is part of step 2 of choosing the format.
Sure, okay.
This is really important because number 1, you have to enjoy the process. You have to find something that you want to wake up tomorrow, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 12 months from now, and create that content. Because A, life is short, but B, all of us are professional content consumers. We scroll through and consume so much content that our subconscious mind is trained that the minute we see like a facial expression off, or you can kind of sense the tension in that person, again, on a subconscious level, this isn't even happening consciously, this is happening in like split seconds, the people viewing the content will see it and will scroll past. But that enjoyment, like even watching your podcast, you love it, you enjoy connecting, it comes off the screen, and that's why it's successful. If you didn't enjoy it, that would subtly come off. So that's step number 2, we have to select the format. Now, the second part of selecting the format is analyzing. So this is still part of step 2. So what we do at Hook Point is, and I'll give a simple exercise that people can do on their own, but we will let's just take man on the street. Let's just say it's Simon Squibb asking people, what is your dream? So our team will open up a spreadsheet and we'll look at 20 of his high performers, the ones that are generating tens of millions of views. But then we'll look at the ones that are average, that are like in the, a little less than 1 million. They're not fully breaking through, but they're having some success. And then most importantly, we look at the underperformers, the ones that are not breaking through. And what we do is we watch all the high performers and then we cross-reference it with the low performers. And we start sitting there and looking at like, what's the difference? Because it's the same person, same format, interviewing people on the street, yet this video generated 50 million views and this one did 50,000. So what's the difference? So we start looking at these storytelling elements called performance drivers. So these are things like the pacing, the tonality, the reaction of the person. How is it edited? What are the facial expressions? What's happening in the background? Because all these small nuances here dictate whether it's
Have an impact.
successful or not. So when our team does it, we spend like 15 to 20 hours doing it. But people at home, what they can just do is they can just choose one video that has millions of views from the same creator, and from the same creator choose one that's the lowest performer, tens of thousands or maybe 100,000, and just do the simple exercise of playing them side by side and start seeing if you can spot the difference. Like, what is different about this high performing video versus this low performing video? And that's where you start to understand why a format works. Because so many people make this mistake of seeing this viral video like Simon Squibb or School of Hard Knocks doing this man on the street, and they're like, oh, you know what? That is so easy. I'm gonna go out and just start interviewing people on the street. But 99% of people that do that fail. Because there's this kind of tip of the iceberg syndrome that people have with social media is the content you're seeing is only this top 1%. You don't see the 99% of people failing with it because it's not gonna seed it to you.
Yes.
So it's this concept of understanding why a storytelling format works. So that's step 2, is we find the format that's fit for us, fit for our resources, fit for us. We analyze it. And then step 3 is now we come up with ideas in the format. Because most people, what do? They start with the idea. But if you start with an idea, that means you probably don't have a format. And then how do you master storytelling? It's like kind of like we're gonna decide to make a movie today, but we haven't studied the 3-act structure. We haven't studied acting or directing. We didn't go to film school. How good is that movie gonna be? It's gonna be pretty bad if we don't study that.
This is eye-opening.
Yeah, so like going back to Tanner Leatherstein, the Is It Worth It format. So he has the format and structure. It's so easy to come up with ideas.
Was it a pre-existing format? Is it worth it?
Yes, it was used in other industries. And this is, and I'm glad you brought that up, is when you're looking for your ideal format, oftentimes you're not going to find it in your niche or industry. So you find it somebody else using it.
Yeah.
So it was a format used in a different context or a different platform, and we adapted it to him. But formats make coming up with ideas so much easier. So if we think about Tanner with Is It Worth It? One day it's a Chanel handbag, the next it's a Prada bag, the next it's a belt, the next is Louis Vuitton shoes. Like, the ideas become easy once you have the format. Does that make sense? Like, ideas thrive within the structure.
Yeah, of course.
Step 4, and this is gonna be hard for a lot of people in the beginning, but one video at a time. Like, a lot of people like to batch produce content, and that's fine once you learn storytelling, but in the beginning when you're doing your format, just produce one video. Just produce one video, test it, and learn from it. So there's a lot of pressure that's put on people because there's a lot of social media experts or gurus say that the key to success is frequency. You need to be posting every day, multiple times a day. But the reality is quality beats quantity every single time. Literally, there's content creators like Mark Rober on YouTube who posts once a month, and he generates hundreds of millions of views. The algorithms don't prioritize the frequency, the amount of content. They reward people that tell the best stories and hold attention for longer. So in the beginning, it's kind of like the crawl before you walk and then walk before you run, is just start slow, create one video at a time, and then learn from it. Because it's kind of like this analogy I like to use is like, imagine that we are testing a new recipe on baking cakes. And we test this recipe on 10 cakes and all 10 are in the oven. We pull the first one out of the oven and it's too dry, we can't eat it. So what do you do with the other 9? You have to throw it out.
Yeah, oh my God, yes.
But the same thing applies to content. People will sit down and produce 10 videos at a time and the first one fails to perform. But what do most people do? It's human behavior. They're not going to throw out the other 9. They're just going to post it. Versus, when you're making a pasta sauce, you're like testing little ingredients, tasting, and refining it to get that perfect result. That's what we want to do with content, is take one step at a time.
Brendan, everything you're saying up until now is actually it's countering a lot of the things that I've read up on social media and the hacks of growing on social media. It's actually quite what's the word for it? It's opposing that.
Yep. But there's a difference between consistency and frequency.
Yes, you're right.
So frequency is the amount of content. Consistency is continuously creating content. So step 5 is sitting there and analyzing and improving. So the reason I created this 5-step system is most people, they create content, it fails, it doesn't break through, and they're left hanging. They're like, why didn't this work? Like, I spent so much time, energy, and resources, like pouring my heart and soul into this piece of content or a series of content, and it doesn't perform. The first thing I want to say, it's not about you. There's no deficiency in you. It's no deficiency in your message, your brand, your product, or any of those things. It's just the way that you're sharing that information. So the reason I created this 5-step system is I wanted to account for that. I don't want there to be a loss of opportunity when something doesn't perform. So if we go back to the process, what we've done is we've researched a format, we found a format, so we have a reference, and we looked at high performers versus low performers. So what we can do is if our video performed, you put your video on one side of the screen, and you put the high performer on the other side of the screen, and you play them side by side. And then if you're honest with yourself, and if you're struggling spot it, just ask a friend or a colleague or something like that. Start to identify, well, what is this person doing that's having success doing differently versus than me? And that allows you to have this opportunity to continuously learn and analyze and improve.
What if you don't want to borrow a format that exists already? Like when you're telling me this, I feel like, oh, I don't want to use a format that someone else is using already. I'm too original. I want to innovate. I want to invent. Do I need to use a format that's pre-existing?
If you want to succeed, yes.
Really?
I mean, listen, you can, so the reason I love that you brought up hacks. The thing is, like, hacks and trends are fleeting. Stories last forever. Do you know when the first story was ever told? 50,000 years ago. Sitting around campfires.
Yes.
But stories back then, it was about survival. Like, how do we survive? How do we eat?
Yeah.
And everything that we see in the world around us, culture, government, anything that we see is built on stories.
Absolutely.
And we look at history. So we went to the written word, books, newspapers, magazines, films, television. Like, there is a structure to success. But what people fail to kind of understand is structure, format unlocks creativity. So if you watch, like Man on the Street, if you watch Simon Squibb, What is Your Dream, versus like School of Hard Knocks and How'd You Made Your First $1 million, they're distinctly different stories, distinctly different experiences that are happening.
But the same format.
Yeah. Like another analogy I like to use is think of the format as the skeleton of the human body. Each skeleton is relatively the same within humans, but the soul within the skeleton is what the creativity lies. So you don't have to tell the same story within a format. The format is just the structure and the blueprint that allows you to express your originality.
Brendan, I've seen so many people who have found a format that's working and then find it too repetitive and tend to look for another one. Have you experienced this? I mean, I've done this in my journey with content. I've done this myself, where I've had this phenomenal series where I was talking about budget designers, right? And it would be in one format. I would feature 10 designers. It would do really well, but I got bored of it.
If you get bored of it, then you can move on. You don't have to stick with the same format forever.
Okay.
But what I recommend is, you're at a different stage than most people are at. What I recommend as you're getting started, stick with one format as long as it feels good to you until you learn to master it. Once you've mastered the process, then you can bring in other formats. You can evolve into other things. There's probably thousands of formats. That's why we've analyzed over 300, because I want to match people to their ideal format that fits right to them. But that doesn't have to say that you have to use that format forever. It's just more about the learning experience, like going back to the instrument. Let's master the guitar before we move to the drums.
You spoke about limiting beliefs, right? What is, now someone tuning in, they're kind of getting comfortable with this 5-step process. But what do you think is the strongest limiting belief that someone creating content needs to let go of?
Well, it's a great question. And the reality is that limiting belief is not about present day. It's about something that's happened in your past. Some type of trauma, some type of experience, somebody bullying you, somebody telling you you're not good enough. It may have happened at age 3, age 5, age 10, 15, whatever it is. But just try to understand, where is that coming from? If I don't feel comfortable being on camera, why is that? Is it because I don't want to do a silly TikTok dance video? Well, that's fine. You don't have to do a silly TikTok dance video. Do you feel like you have to change who you are or you have to be an actor? Great. Well, you don't have to do that. But if it's like, I just don't feel comfortable in front of the camera, try and understand like what is behind that. Why do I have that limiting belief? And try and work through that. Because the minute that you can separate the present day like reality from the past, that's where you can really free yourself from it. In addition, like if you're just getting into this, it's gonna feel awkward in the beginning. I would just recommend just post or just record yourself. It doesn't mean you have to post, but just get in the practice of actually recording you. And then if you are recording, but you don't feel good enough to post it, give it to a friend to post it. Like if you want to completely separate yourself from it. But I just want to make sure that, because I just see so many brilliant people in the world that have the power to transform it in a positive way, but they just got to take that first step. So it's just taking one step at a time.
When you spoke about step 5 and actually analyzing the content, right?
Yeah.
Are there any metrics to specifically analyze?
So we predominantly look at less the metrics. We use kind of like the number of views, like for example on videos, we look at the number of views to tell us if something is performing or not performing. And we benchmark those views against what the high performer is doing. But we're looking less at the metrics and more about the communication elements, the storytelling elements that are happening on the screen. Now, certain platforms have a retention graph, meaning it'll show you when people drop off, where you can look at that graph and pinpoint exactly where people are starting to watch. And then you can look at that part and see, well, what did I miss there? What am I doing to cause people to scroll to the next video? I would say that that's probably, if the channel that you're working on has a retention graph, that would be the primary thing. But for people that don't want to get into data and numbers, like you don't have to. It's like literally it's just this side-by-side comparison of just playing them against each other and just trying to spot the difference in patterns.
And is that like a human spotting? Like almost like, oh, it was a bigger smile here. Oh, the voice was louder, more confident. Or maybe the product was seen clearly.
Or maybe I was talking too fast. Maybe I was using, like industry jargon that people don't understand. There can be a number of different variables. You're just trying to, at a bare minimum, just spot what are the differences between the two videos. What can you see in that?
How do you feel about hooks? Hooks is something that has been so widely used, I think just in the last year or two on social media. And it's a viral word in itself, right? Like, use this hook and you'll go viral, or use this hook and that's how you grab the attention. Where are you at with that concept?
Well, hooks have been around for hundreds of years. I literally written an entire book on hooks. And I published it about 5 years ago. So hook is a tool to get people to pay attention to what you have to say. So it's an important part of the recipe to success. However, it's not the only part. Is once you hook people, you need to be able to grab the story. So what is the purpose of the hook? The purpose of the hook is to share with people that you have a unique perspective on the subject matter that you're about to talk about. Because the reality is, everything's been done, everything has been said. If you type it, like if you're a yoga instructor, you can type in yoga or yoga instructor into Google, there's going to be a billion results. So how do you differentiate yourself from every other yoga instructor out there? And that's the purpose of the hook, to say to people, hey, you may have heard about yoga, but I'll give you a prime example. Let's just say we're going to create a video about meditation. I love meditation. I've been meditating most of my life. But meditation's been talked about a million times. So if I create a video with a hook that says, meditation is the key to contentment. It's the key to stillness. It's the key to clarity. Well, okay, why do I need to watch the rest of the video? I already know. But if I say, meditation is a scam, well, what is this person going to say? But I can still say, you know what? Meditation is a scam. Have you ever felt that way? I felt it the first time I tried meditation because somebody told me I had to sit down, close my eyes, and clear my head. But every time I sat down and closed my eyes and tried to clear my head, I had a million thoughts racing through my head. And I thought to myself, this is an absolute scam. Until I met this Buddhist monk that told me this valuable lesson. You know what he said? He said that when you close your eyes, tell your brain, give me as many thoughts as you possibly can. And once you do that, the mind slows down. So that is when I learned meditation is the key to all of these elements. Now, I'm not saying you have to subvert expectations every time, but it's kind of leveraging a hook to bring people into the powerful story that you have to say. Now, a lot of people miss this point, is you don't just hook people in the first 3 seconds. You hook people throughout the video. So you have one hook, you resolve it. You have another hook, you resolve it. You have another, and it goes ebbs and flows in this. And depending on the length of the video, the more hooks you need to retain the audience's attention.
What was the hook in Is It Worth It?
So the hook is this $500
Oh, that
Chanel
they're ripping
handbag?
apart.
Yeah. Is this $500? No, just the hook is just, is this $5,000 Chanel handbag worth it? So that is enough to get people to stick around, because even I watch those videos and I don't buy Chanel handbags because I want to see, are they overcharging you? Is it worth it? But the retention is he has the different hooks with tearing off different pieces of the handbag or the leather product. I believe in this so much that I literally just, like that book about the hook, people can download it for free. I won't even charge for it. If they just go to hookpoint.com, they can just literally download it for free. It's a 200-page book all about hooks. And I went around the world and interviewed the top marketers in the world about how to craft hooks, not just on social media, but how you do it in the real world as well. Because we use hooks in everyday life.
Absolutely.
If we're in a job interview or meeting somebody for the first time,
Or inviting someone on a podcast.
Exactly, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Or even in a meeting.
Yes.
Right? To actually get the person interested in you and see the value in you.
Yes.
You have to hook them in.
I had to, because when I was in my young 20s, I started building technology. So I built the first influencer technology platform in 2007. So I had to go into Facebook, MTV, like as a young kid in boardrooms full of like 50-year-old people, and they're like, who is this young kid? What is he? And I had to kind of learn that on the fly. It's such a valuable skill set.
True, absolutely.
So even if people don't want to do social media, mastering hooks just for your everyday life, it's going to make things easier. But I do agree with you, it's oversaturated, the term at this point. Everybody is talking about hooks and stuff, but there's not a lot of depth and substance to the psychology behind it.
Exactly. Sometimes when something becomes oversaturated, you miss the point of it.
Yes.
Because it's been overused and not entirely in the correct concept.
Yes.
Right? Like I wasn't until this moment thinking about hooks in every other area of life, and actually how they're such a valuable tool of communication. Or achieving huge. Anything that you want to achieve. Yeah. It's actually the hook. Getting a meeting, like getting attention of an investor, or getting a date on an app.
1,000%. Yeah. What's the hook on your profile?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, because we're making these split-second decisions.
How does someone creating content identify what's going to be a strong hook for them? Right? Like where I'm going with this is that there's so much of this copycat situation that goes on the internet today. So you're not even thinking about the hook, you're copying someone else's hook. Right? You're thinking about, and this is my problem with person on the street, right? I feel like it's a format that's so copied, but even in what's being asked, what you do for a living is now a hook that's adopted by so many people. So 2 questions here, right? One is, where does invention and creativity of content kick in? Let's say pertaining to a hook.
Yep.
Second thing is, how do you distinguish yourself if everything can be replicated?
So there's a distinction between copying to copy versus copying to learn. So they say the great artists in the world steal. Picasso said that. They learn from others. They make it their own. So let's just go back to Man on the Street. The most successful ones, Simon Squibb, his is What is Your Dream? Versus the career ladder guy is he's getting people on the ladder and trying to guess their career profession. Versus a friend of mine, Alex Stemp, who's a photographer who's built an audience of 20 million people. He approaches random strangers and asks them, can I offer you a professional photo shoot? Or we have a chef as a client. He approaches people, asks them, what is your favorite meal? And then he goes back home, cooks it, and then brings it to him.
Wow.
So within that, they're not asking the same questions. It's nowhere near the same subject matter. Yeah. It's the structure. But will there be people out there that just do the same thing? Yes. But that's not the point of what we're talking about, is learn why they are successful and then figure out how you can apply it to yourself. And the same thing goes with hooks, is understand the science behind the hook, the psychology of it, and then shape it to who you are as an individual, how you represent yourself. Because if you're just clone copying somebody else, then you're not being who you are.
True.
But again, like going back, movies are the best example. Every movie is using the same format. So a sci-fi movie versus a haunted house movie, same format. So people get kind of locked into this, like, I need to just kind of break it and just create something completely original. You can, good luck with it. Like, it's just like, if you look at the history of how human beings connect with people, with stories, with brands, with companies, is they're leveraging things that have been proven to succeed time and time again.
So the format is something that's tested, it's age old,
Yeah.
It's verified. Does the hook have to be invented, or can that also be something that's been used before?
It can
And I'm
be,
going over
yeah.
this again and again to
Yeah.
kind of get to the bottom of this, so don't mind me.
No, absolutely. So you don't want to use the exact kind of hook, but like, look at what Mr. Beast is doing right now. Okay, the first time that format and kind of like core essence of the hook was used in terms of like Beast games and these things was in 1996 for a TV show on MTV called Road Rules. And then Survivor did it around 1999, 2000. But Mr. Beast has his own expression of it. So the underlying, and even with his videos is, he'll have a video of, this pilot, if he stays in this private jet, lives in this private jet for 60 days, he gets to keep it. Or the next one will be, if these two people stay on top of this like high-rise thing, like 200 feet of ground above the ground together, they'll win $500,000. So the structure of the hook is basically the same, and it's very similar to what things have come before, but he's using his own expression of it. But it's a great question, because it's like people struggle with this, is like, I want to be who I am.
Yes.
But I don't want to be somebody else. And that's definitely not what I'm here to say, is that you can be yourself. It's just we're trying to study what works and how we apply it to who we are.
Is there a hook framework that someone could test in their piece of content? Or is it something that, we hear this a lot, and I've seen a lot of these videos on social media which says that it needs to drive curiosity, or it needs to drive a sense of alertness, or like you said, like a sense of contrast framing, which is meditation a scam?
Yeah.
Are there any sort of parameters to define that hook?
As you've seen, there's a lot of ways to design hooks. I think that the kind of like the bare bones basic structure that I would give people is, number one, how are you making sure that you are saying something that people already haven't heard before? That's number one. Number two, are you setting a very clear expectation for why somebody should watch this video? And just as important, are you paying off that expectation? Because we're not talking about clickbait here and tricking people, because that just doesn't work there. So it's how do we set the stage of how we're different and how we're setting a clear expectation. So a great exercise people could do outside of social media is think about a magazine stand or a newspaper stand. And you have all these newspapers or magazines on a stand. If you were given the cover of one of them, what would be your headline that would get somebody to stop, pick that up, buy it, and then read it? Because sometimes you need to kind of like push yourself outside of social media to come up with it. But that's like the biggest, I would say, framework to start with, is just you need to make sure that you are expressing that what you're going to provide is unique to you and that you're going to pay off and it's going to be worth their while. But hooks, and this is more an advanced thing, hooks doesn't have to be verbal, it doesn't have to be text, it can be an action, visual. It can be visual, things of that nature.
So Brendan, just given the 5-step formula that you've taken us through, you would say trends is a no?
Yes. Don't go after trends.
Don't go after trends.
Because you're just going to be chasing a trend and a trend and a trend, and if you don't have a process to continue your learning and get better, then what do? You're just going to burn yourself out.
So let's say there's virality that kicks in, right? But I think what a lot of people have seen on social media today is they've gone viral once.
Yes.
Or there's this one random piece of content that goes viral, and then content kind of plateaus.
Yep.
What does that mean? How does one decipher that? And how do you achieve long-term sustainable growth?
So the reason people go viral once and can't replicate it is they're either chasing a trend or they're not using any type of format. So that's why I say stick with the format, choose the format, because the clues lie back there. Because if you have one video that goes success off a trend, well, what are you going to compare it to? I mean, you can compare it to other trends, but then you're going to be going for the next one and the next one and the next one. And if you have, no reference point, then how are you going to study and understand what the difference is? So I'm a broken record, but again, it's just this, at the highest level.
No, I agree with you.
Formats are like the
I
key
love
to success.
that.
Yeah.
I love that. I love when there's something carved in stone and you need to keep coming back to that.
Yeah.
I think there's nothing actually more impactful than that. So I'm here for that. Is there a way to, say someone sees that virality, is there something that they should do right after or for that following period of time to like maintain it? Let's say it's not a trend, right? Let's say they're using a format. But I think we've understood where trends right now. Let's say they're using a format. What can one do to actually make sure they get the most of that viral moment?
So one thing we haven't talked about that's really important is everything that I'm discussing here is we're not talking about going viral for the sake of going viral. We're talking about achieving your goals, building your business, building your brand. So the reality is any subject matter can go viral. So we are not doing content for the sake of doing content just to get views and engagement. So taxes go viral, warranties go viral. I have a friend in London that creates terrariums, has 3 million followers that goes viral. Car insurance goes viral. Any subject matter can go viral. So choose the format, leverage the format for your expertise. The second part of it is you need to make sure that you have a foundation in place to capitalize off that attention, once it hits. So certain things that you can look at. First off, do you have a great product or service? Because if you don't have a great product or service, it does not matter how much attention that you have. It's going to be fleeting and not last. Number two, is your website set up properly? Can you handle enough traffic? Do you have the ability to retarget that audience if people click on the link in your bio? Do you have a way that people can sign up for your email list? Are you sending emails out? How are you getting people to repurchase? So that's at a bare minimum kind of aspect. So one of the people ask me all the time, Brendan, what is the ROI? What is the return on investment of social media? And what I tell them is it depends. It depends on how big is your vision, how big is your dream. So I have a friend, one of the earliest YouTubers. She was the first woman to hit 1 million subscribers on YouTube. Her name is Michelle Fan. And she she was a master of social media, but there were other beauty influencers that were masters of it. And she's like, you know what? I'm not going to play this brand deal game. Like it's fine that other people get brands, but I'm going to create my own company because I'm getting so much attention. So instead of just taking the next brand deal, her and her friends created a company called Ipsy, where they would send quarterly beauty subscription boxes to the homes. And that company within 3 years was doing $125 million a year in revenue. It was valued at $800 million at one point. So while others are just kind of like, my business is going to get ad revenue and brand deals, which is fine. If you have the right business, the right dream, everything else is going to fall into place with that. So that's a big important distinction is like, imagine 1 million people are going to watch your video. Well, what are you going to do with that? Are you set up to handle that? Do you have the process to shepherd those people into your business, into your product, and into your service? And there's other strategies too, like Instagram has like a ManyChat integration, which is more technical, where you can say like, comment this below, you're using it for your podcast. That can generate leads and things of that nature. But I think starting with the bare basics of like, what is the foundation to what you're behind your building is the most important thing.
So the way I would ask people tuning in to actually think about it is that, why do you want to go viral? And what is that feeding into? There's no kind of personal satisfaction or ego that kind of kicks in when you hit 1 million views, right? It lasts for 5 minutes. And I think we both could vouch for that.
Yeah.
There's nothing else that you derive from it. But it's so important to actually think about what that end goal is and where you're able to drive that. So if it's a brand with a product, then it probably would be driving them to the product sales, which is why you want your content to go viral, so it feeds into the product sales. Is this where you're going at it?
So the way that I look at social media is the purpose of it is to get people to know, like, and trust you. And if people know, like, and trust you, they'll want to buy from you. So that is the purpose of creating content where they ultimately want to take that next step. So like Tanner Letterstein with the Is It Worth It format, he's not like selling his product in those videos.
Yeah.
He's building trust with that relationship. So that's kind of the way that I look at it. The other thing I think the important distinction is, when we talk about going viral, it doesn't mean that you have to get 1 million views. Like, I equate going viral to capturing enough attention to hit your business goals and objectives. For some people, if they get 50,000 views, they'll have a line out the door. They'll make plenty of money. So don't necessarily think that I have to get millions of subscribers or millions of followers or millions of views. If you have the right business and the right message and the right story, it'll ultimately hit at whatever number you're going after.
So don't kind of follow this preset metric that the internet has sold to you.
I agree. The only thing that I kind of look at is when we're studying content, we're studying what makes storytelling work. We will use the 1 million views. So if we're looking at like a man on the street format or any format, we want to see videos in the millions of views to learn from and compare that to the low performers. That doesn't mean we have to generate that many views, but to learn how to become a master of format, you have to learn from people doing it at the highest levels.
And what about content creators who don't have a product or a service to sell?
I would say figure out what that is. I mean, you can do brand deals, you can make ad revenue, but that is, you just never know when that's going to dry up. Like, what happens if the economy falters and then the brands don't pay money? Or what happens if what happens if one of these platforms closes your account for a mistake or on purpose? It's just like, I would just have a vision of what you're trying to build. That doesn't mean you have to build $1 billion company, but we're relying on other like brand deals and just ad revenue. I think it's just limiting the overall potential that you could have.
Why do you think sometimes average content performs incredible content or incredible looking content?
A few reasons. As I was mentioning earlier, we've all become professional content consumers. So oftentimes the content, especially the short form, the content we're deciding to watch is not coming from the conscious mind, it's coming from the subconscious mind. So when we see a polished camera or a camera shot or lighting or an actor, a trigger goes off in our head, they're gonna try and sell me something. This is going to be an ad. versus something that is more UGC, shot on an iPhone. A, it kind of feels more authentic. B, it also kind of like seeds in your head what's going to happen here. Like that's one of the reasons Man on the Street works is you're approaching a random stranger in the street and there's this tension that's built automatically of like you don't know what's going to happen. So that's where oftentimes overproduction can work against you.
It's human psychology.
Yes. All of this is human psychology.
Is there a certain emotion in human psychology that you think gets a greater reaction on the internet? Right? Like, I think Man on the Street is curiosity. Also, you're like kind of anxious about the reaction that's going to come in from the person. But are there other emotions that you think, I think like a very successful format on television has been kind of rags to riches.
Yes.
Which is actually showing someone, who doesn't come from the most blessed background or life and being able to show them in front of you and then showing them have a win.
Yes.
So is there any formats on social, any emotions that?
So I'll give the audience a really helpful kind of tool to think about this. So we leverage a communication model that's been around since the 1970s. And this human transactional analysis, this really smart psychologist identify that there are 6 different ways that people perceive the world. And we kind of look at it as almost like a mathematical formula. So the largest subset of the population, 30%, is feeling-based. So these people are going to connect with your content, your message, your brand, based upon how it makes them feel. So there's this emotional connection needs to happen. The second largest subset of the population, 25%, is facts. So for them, it's not about feelings, it's does this make sense? They want data, they want information, they want timeframes, who, what, when, where, why. Then 20%, the third largest subset of the population, is fun-based. So they don't care about feelings, they don't care about facts, they just want to have a good time. They want to kind of like dance, they want to, experience things. Entertainment. And then 10% is value-based. So it's about opinions. They want to know, can I trust you? Am I dedicated? Do we share the same, values? Another 10% is reflective based. So these people stare off into space and they're kind of reflecting on the world around them. Like Albert Einstein, like if you read biographies about him, he would literally just stare outside the window of his office all day long, reflecting on the world to come up with his best theories. And the smallest subset of the population is action-based, so it's 5%. So these people don't think, they don't feel, they go, 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 go. Incidents is their psychological driver. So the best example of that is Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible. What is he doing? The entire movie, he's jumping off the side of buildings. He's hanging off the side of planes. He's just going. So when we think about content and designing it, we typically talk about hitting the big 3: feelings, facts, fun, because that represents 75% of the population. So like to give you an example, if I was a real estate agent, and I actually did work with one of the biggest real estate companies out there, is most real estate agents are just selling from a fact base. Is this house has 5 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms on an acre of land with a pool? It's like, okay, well, how would we diversify that? Well, we could say, start off with the facts, because that's 25% of the population. This has 5 bathrooms, 4 bedrooms, acre of land, has a pool. And imagine yourself sitting around that fireplace on Christmas Eve.
With your family.
With your family. How is that going to make you feel?
Emotional.
With everybody there. And that pool in the backyard, you are going to have the funnest and craziest parties, and all your friends are going to be super jealous. So we take this same subject matter as a house, and you can do it for any product you have, and you're just diversifying the language around it. Now, they don't talk about this, but Pixar, all of their screenplays are designed in this model. So that is why each character is designed for each way that people perceive the world, so that everybody can connect with it. So that's the way that I kind of look at when you ask the question about emotions. Well, some people want that emotional connection. It's like the rags to riches, that one that you were talking about. And there's a lot of Man on the Street formats of people doing that, of like, there's a homeless person here. Like there's a guy, Vic Blends, who approaches homeless people on the street and offers them a free haircut. There's other people like MD Motivator that offers to like take them on to buy new clothes for a job interview or get them a hotel, things of that nature. So like the rags to riches is like, there's that emotional part that we
Yes.
connect with, but then there's also kind of like the fact base of like, well, how is this going to turn out? Like, what are the steps? And then there's also a fun part, because it's kind of fun to see somebody like taking this person, like the MD motivator guy will take people to the Super Bowl or things of that nature. Like that's a fun experience. So when we think about content, yes, we want to tap into people's emotions, but we also want it to make sense and we want it to be fun. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Now I'm going to ask you, Brendan, that let's take the 5-step formula. And I feel like there's two really macro learnings from our conversation today, right? One is a 5-step formula. And the second thing is the 5 things that you just spoke about, which I think are such strong parameters to kind of gauge when someone is creating content, right? What emotion, what feeling is it coming from? And that, or, I mean, one of them is emotional, but I would call all of them as almost an emotion or a feeling that they're relating to.
Yeah.
Let's take my podcast as an example. How would you apply it to this as a piece of content?
It's a great question. So, and I worked with like one of the biggest journalists in the United States and did like interviews with like Joe Biden and DJ Khaled and all these people. And the thing that I learned, and it's one of the principles you can apply to any content, not just a podcast, it's called effect on viewer. Is most of the time when we're creating content, we're thinking about what we want to say, what we want to achieve, what our goals are, instead of thinking about what is the effect of the person on the other side of the screen. To your point, what do we want them to feel? What do we want them to experience? So the way that I approach podcasts is I don't start with questions. I start with what are the 10 hooks? What are the 15 hooks, throughout the interview? And what experience, what do I want people to feel from that hook? And then once you understand that, then you can craft the questions around that. Because I'm sure you've interviewed a lot of people and you ask somebody a question and they'll be like, yes. Or they'll just be like, just kind of flat. Or like, you're not getting what you're looking for. Versus like, if you know what you're looking for, then you can ask the question in like 3 or 4 or 5 different ways. So again, it's like this concept of effect on viewer is what is the effect that we want, not just for the entire podcast for the audience, but every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, every 15 minutes. Because the more we can think through it that way, the more we can keep hooking people and building that tension and releasing it and having this experience for them, the more likely they're going to stick around and watch the entire episode, but other ones as well.
So 5 hooks per episode. So, and for the hooks, they have to be either emotional, fun, fact. Is that the parameter that I look for when I'm setting a hook?
Yes, but you also need to understand the person you're interviewing and what their personality is, because you may need to bring the fun. You may need to bring the feeling. So it's kind of understanding who are you speaking to and how do you kind of like play off of that.
Yeah.
Because like if somebody is just pure fact-based, it's hard to get them into feelings. It's hard to get them into fun, but that doesn't mean that you can't bring that into it. But like when I think about hooks, like I create as many as possible. So I'll like if I were to interview somebody, I would try and come up with 30 or 40, and then I would rank like what are the top 10. So go through them and like rank them.
Okay. So what would be my hooks with you today?
I think that there's several ones. It's like, for example, it could be how to build a business with 0 followers. It's how do I overcome fear about social media and transform myself and my business and brand through it. So I think what I would do is like, what is the effect that you want people to have? And you had mentioned that you have a lot of people that are entrepreneurs, a lot of people that work for companies that may be hesitant to hold back, or maybe hesitant on social media, or maybe frustrated with it. So I would kind of think through that and tap into kind of those emotions. There's an amazing quote and thought exercise that a friend of mine, Craig Clements, who I consider the best copywriter in the world, gave me when I interviewed him for my book, and it was the book about hooks. His company has sold over $2 billion worth of products in social media. And he says this a really brilliant, insightful thing. He says, the minute that you can understand your audience or your customer and think about what wakes them up in the middle of the night, what causes anxiety, what causes stress, but understanding the exact words that are going in their head, like what are they saying to themselves? And you can articulate that pain through the same words they're using. That is when you win their trust. That is when you win your audience. So in terms of how we create a hook for this podcast or other ones, it's kind of thinking through like, what are people saying about social media to themselves? What wakes them up in the middle of the night? I think a lot of it is like, I put my heart, soul, and time into this and it doesn't work. Or I don't feel good enough to be on social media. Or social media is only for the wealthy people or the people with big budgets or big teams. Kind of tying into those emotional aspects to do it. But when I come up with hooks, I like to sit there for like an hour or two and like just like, again, like come up with a list of it and just rank them.
Wow. You've really opened up my mind today.
But like if anybody like picks up one of my books, and again, I give them away for free, like they all three have the same dedication. And that dedication is I truly believe there are people all over the world that have the ability to transform it in a positive way through their message, their product or services. They just need that helping hand. They need that blueprint, that kind of like distill it down, because like you and I are in this world, we see so much noise about social media that you have to have the magic key to the algorithm. You have to hack it. You have to do all of these things in order to have success. But it just always comes back to storytelling.
But do you think every entrepreneur needs to be a social media personality?
No. It definitely helps.
It helps.
It helps. I've built businesses without social media. You've just got to understand, like, what are your competitors doing? You know, look, for example, are you familiar with Duolingo? Like,
yes.
People can check out that they created a mascot, like, and it blew up. You know, there's different ways. Like, you don't have to be the face of your brand. There's other ways and structures to go about it. There's formats out there for everything in every scenario, every use case. So it doesn't have to be necessarily you in front of the camera.
Because that's important. And I felt like this, but I really wanted your thoughts on this, because when you ask me, I do think this question keeps people up at night, is that I'm not confident enough to be on social media. And I feel like sometimes, I come from the school of thought that everyone doesn't need to be on it, right? It's a very successful medium, but is it the one that's aligned with who you are as a person? And everyone deserves to be different. I don't think everyone needs to love the camera or be able to take that mic. And, you know, you got to hone your attributes and play on your strengths.
I agree. I think that I look at it two ways. If somebody is thinking to themselves, I'm not confident enough to be on social media, is that just a limiting belief? Or is it really just not authentically fit who you want to be in the world? Because I think it's two different things. I think that oftentimes we catch ourselves up with these limiting beliefs, and it kind of shapes our perceptions of ourselves when it's a false perception that's driven by something that somebody did to you in the past. And listen, I've gone through the process. I've gone through trauma therapy. I've gone through all of those things. I had a very traumatic childhood. It is not easy, but it is so rewarding if you actually face that and overcome it. But that's not the pressure to say that you don't have to do anything. There's so many ways to be successful in life. There's so many different ways to be successful in business. But it's getting to the core of that. But there's like amazing accounts, like, and I keep saying man on the street because it's like a format everybody knows.
Yes.
There's an amazing guy, Hunter Prosper, who approaches people on the street and asks them emotionally charged questions about their life. Like, who was your first love? What was your first heartbreak? And he's not on camera. There's another account I'm sure you may have seen because they sometimes shoot in Dubai called Dose of Society, where they're asking similar questions about it, and you can't see the person on camera. So there's so many ways of going about it. But I think it's just, I always try and guide people or inspire people to look within themselves and understand why that belief is there. Because I just don't like seeing like really brilliant people. I'm sure you know so many talented, brilliant people that if they just got
100%.
out there
Yeah.
the world would just open up for them.
Yes, no, I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. And I really hope that some of those brilliant people watching this episode today can achieve that and, and find the confidence to break out of it.
I would love to see people in the comments if they try and create the content and stuff in the formats. Yes. We would love to see it. I'll dig into the comments and watch the content.
Absolutely, me too. Me too. I read every single comment. I'm here for them for sure. But as a final note, Brendan, I'd ask you, what would you say to someone who's been creating content for a while now, but still feels invisible with it and feels like they haven't been able to achieve what they set out to achieve with that content?
Number one question is, are you using a format? If you're not using a format, go and find your format and go off that way. Because I guarantee, I mean, just the people that are watching this, they are going to be far more prepared for success in social media than 99.9% of people creating content. Because most people creating content don't understand that there is this thing is called a format, that there is this process for success. So if you've been struggling, are you using a format? If not, go and find one that feels authentic to you, that matches where you're at. If you are using a format, well, do that exercise. Find somebody that's using that format. And again, oftentimes you're not going to find the same industry or same niche about using the same format. So don't pay attention to the content, pay attention to the context, and do that exercise of putting somebody using that format on one side of the screen and you on the other side of the screen, and play them side by side and see the difference. And if you can't see the difference, then ask a friend, ask a colleague to watch it with you and to point out the things that feels different.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Brendan, for your time today. And this is such a power-packed episode. Like there's so much value in it. And I hope that everyone tunes in, doesn't miss a minute.
Hopefully
Thanks
that's helpful to your
so much,
audience.
Brendan. That was
amazing.
It was. I think this is one of my top 3 best episodes that I've shot.
Amazing.
Thank you so much for watching or listening all the way through. I'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. It helps this show reach more incredible people like you, and most importantly, get closer to our goal to build an incredible community with the Masoom Minawala show. My goals with this show are audacious, and you all are the most important part of this journey. I want to create for you. So tell me what you want to hear. What stories could change your life? I read every single comment, and your reflections honestly help us shape where this show goes next. I'll see you in the next one.